The galaxy had always been a place of peace, until Earth arrived. For millennia, the Galactic Council had maintained its oversight across the stars. From the ancient, psionically advanced Zelriths, whose minds could weave the very fabric of space-time, to the Kavarians, whose civilizations were older than most species could comprehend. The galactic body had seen all manner of beings come and go. Peace and diplomacy were the bedrock on which the Council was built, the ultimate resolution to any problem being conversation, compromise, and collaboration. For so long this delicate balance had worked, until humans made their entrance. The first signal from Earth came as a low-frequency burst, barely detectable. It was faint, distant, and odd, but there was something about it that caught the attention of the Council. Zareth, the most accomplished of the Zelrith scholars, had been the first to recognize it as a sentient message. Her species had refined the art of deciphering unknown signals centuries ago, and her instincts had never steered her wrong. At first, the Council was cautious. They hadn't received a signal from a species so primitive before. Earth's technology was still in the early stages of interstellar exploration. Their political landscape was fractured, their histories marred by endless wars, and their biological processes were nothing like any species the Council had encountered. Yet the humans were sending signals that were unmistakably intentional enough to pique curiosity. It took months to fully decode the transmissions, which were laced with a complex set of mathematical patterns and a burst of audio that sounded almost like an ancient form of music. Despite their primitive nature, there was something raw and vibrant about their signals. The humans, it seemed, were reaching out. Whether consciously or not, they were broadcasting to the galaxy, offering an invitation, or perhaps a plea. The decision was made to respond. A small delegation, led by Dralian, the chairperson of the Council and a member of the ancient Zelrith species, was dispatched to Earth. The Council knew they had to make contact soon, before humanity made the next step in their technological development, a step that might close off all chances for peaceful contact forever. The ship that arrived above Earth was the largest the Council had ever built. The Galactarian Ark was an immense vessel that radiated light and gentle energy. Its sleek, pearlescent exterior was designed to instill awe and peace, ensuring that no aggressive thoughts could be perceived from the humans below. The ship descended slowly toward the heart of the planet, the United Nations headquarters in New York City, its arrival nothing short of spectacular. But when the Ark's shimmering light finally reached Earth's surface, something unexpected happened. The humans refused to meet. An unexpected rejection. The first message from Earth had arrived the day after the Ark landed. The transmission came not from any one leader, but from a collective network of humans across the planet. The humans, as it turned out, had no singular authority. There were thousands of governments, corporations, factions, and alliances all vying for control. The message was "We acknowledge your presence in Earth's atmosphere," the message read, "but we do not wish to engage in any diplomatic negotiations. Our sovereignty is not for you to claim." There was no warm welcome, no signs of curiosity, just a cold, unyielding refusal. The tone was civil yet firm. Humanity had clearly thought this through, but why? Why had they reached out initially if they had no intention of talking? Why had they opened the door only to close it so quickly? Dralian, the Zelrith chairperson, was stunned. She stood motionless, eyes fixed on the projection of the human's message. It wasn't simply a refusal, it was a challenge. "How is this possible?" Zonta, the representative from the Velvach species, asked, his voice filled with disbelief. The Velvach were a race of hyper-pragmatists, and their primary mode of operation was diplomacy. They believed in solving problems with calculated precision, using data and logic to guide their way forward. To them, the idea that a species would outright reject diplomacy was inconceivable. "They must not understand," said Yilkor, the aged and wise Kavarian, their immense dark eyes scanning the room. "Perhaps they fear us, or perhaps they are simply not ready." But even Yilor, who had lived through countless moments of galactic tension, was taken aback. The humans had shown potential, eagerness in their signals. Their scientific community had begun to take leaps in artificial intelligence, space exploration, and medical technology. Humanity's potential was undeniable, yet here they were, rejecting the most peaceful offer of cooperation the galaxy had ever extended. "Let us respond," Taru, the bank's philosopher, suggested. "Let us open a dialogue in their language. Surely there is some misunderstanding?" Dralian shook her head, signaling that the matter was more complex than that. "This is not about misunderstanding. This is something deeper. If they reject diplomacy outright, we must understand why." The Council's panic. The Council convened an emergency meeting to discuss the situation. The Ark remained stationed in orbit above Earth, awaiting further instructions, but no response came from the human leaders. No communication, no curiosity. For the first time in their histories, the Council was at a loss. Every species present had their own theories, but the more they spoke, the more they realized how little they knew about the humans. "We could try something more direct," suggested Zareth. "Send one of our own to the ground, offer them more detailed communication. Maybe they will listen to one of their own kind." But Dralian dismissed the idea. If they are rejecting diplomacy itself, a personal meeting will only escalate things. We must understand what drives them. From that point onward, the Council's focus shifted to the humans themselves. They turned their gaze inward, scanning every available piece of information about the human race, their history, their cultures, their politics. Why were they rejecting peace? The more they dug, the more they began to uncover the source of the humans' reluctance. Humanity had a deep fear of the unknown. Their history was one of isolation, of conflict. Over centuries, Earth had experienced countless wars, battles, and struggles for control. But the true turning point, the one that made all the difference, was a brief but dangerous period in their history. Earth had been part of a failed galactic federation, an alliance of species that had attempted to integrate Earth into galactic politics long before the current Galactic Council had been formed. That federation had dissolved violently, leaving the humans with deep scars. "We cannot forget the scars of the Federation Wars," one human historian explained in a distant recording. "Our ancestors were forced into treaties that we did not understand. We were pawns in a galactic game that had nothing to do with us." The humans had not forgotten that painful chapter in their history, and now as they faced the Council's arrival, they saw another opportunity for external forces to impose their will. The humans did not want to be part of a system that they felt would only use them for its own purposes. "They feel betrayed," said Dralian. "The humans are not rejecting diplomacy itself. They are rejecting what they perceive as our imposition." For the first time, a true understanding began to form. The humans were not unwilling to interact. They were unwilling to be controlled. It was not a refusal of peace, but a refusal of subjugation. The final decision. The Council continued to monitor Earth's situation closely, trying to predict the humans' next move. But days passed, and no further responses came. The humans remained silent, their message unchanging. The Ark hovered quietly above them, like an unanswered prayer. The delegation from the Galactic Council remained in tense silence as they debated the next steps. Many argued that they should force the issue. Others, including Dralian, understood that the situation required a different approach. "We must allow them to lead," Dralian said, her voice firm. "If we push too hard, we risk alienating them forever. Instead, let us demonstrate that we understand their desire for sovereignty. Let us offer them something they cannot ignore, our trust." It was an unprecedented move. The Council had never allowed a species to control its own fate in such a way, but the humans were different. They were not simply rejecting diplomacy, they were demanding respect, and it was clear that, for the first time in centuries, the Council had to learn from them. The Ark would stay above Earth, but for the first time the Galactic Council would relinquish its control. They would wait for the humans to initiate the next phase of contact. If the humans were ready, they would reach out. The Council could do nothing but wait. To be continued. The Galactic Council had always prided itself on its ability to maintain peace. Each member race had its own struggles, its own history, but diplomacy had always been the answer to conflict. Over the centuries, they had grown accustomed to the rituals of negotiation, long discussions, debates, compromises, sometimes slow, but always steady. Every new species that entered the fold was an opportunity for expansion, for knowledge, for unity. It was a well-oiled machine built on trust, communication, and shared progress. But Earth was different. Humanity's rejection of the Galactic Council's first overtures to Earth was not just a setback, it was a sign of something much larger at play. The Ark, which had once been a symbol of the galaxy's collective peace, now hung ominously above Earth, a silent observer waiting for something that may never come. The Council's delegates remained stationed, unsure of their next move. The tension built. Days passed without a response from the humans. The situation became more fragile by the hour. In every corner of the galaxy, Council members debated, could Earth's refusal of diplomacy be chalked up to some form of misunderstanding? Or was it something deeper? Some argued that humanity's fears were founded in history, the Federation Wars, a galaxy-spanning conflict from Earth's past. Others, like Xantha, the pragmatic Velvat representative, felt that the situation should be addressed swiftly and directly. "We cannot let this fester," Xantha said, his words sharp. "If humanity will not engage, we must take action. The refusal of diplomacy could be a sign of aggression, or worse, an attempt to isolate themselves from the galaxy entirely." His words hung in the air like smoke, his dark, angular eyes glinting with the conviction of a species that had long prided itself on its ability to get things done. The Velvac were an advanced race of hyper-pragmatists, possessing a brilliant intelligence for negotiation and organization. To them, conflict had a very clear set of steps. Step 1, address it directly. Step 2, neutralize it. Step 3, move forward. But Zareth, the Zelrith scholar, disagreed. "We are making assumptions. We cannot rush to conclusions. Humanity has shown us that they are not rejecting peace. They are rejecting our method of diplomacy. They see us as a threat, not a partner." "You would prefer to wait indefinitely?" Xantha countered, his tone rising. "We cannot afford to wait while they potentially undermine the stability of the galaxy." Dralian, the ancient and wise chairperson of the Council, who had seen the rise and fall of countless species, took a deep breath. She was the voice of reason, the one who had maintained unity for centuries. "We must be patient," she said, her voice steady. "There is no benefit to hasty actions. Humanity does not reject peace, they reject being controlled. We need to understand them, why they've responded this way." Zareth nodded, a somber expression crossing her face. The Zelriths had a unique understanding of sentient behavior, capable of reading emotional cues and underlying motivations with uncanny precision. "They have been isolated for so long," she continued, her voice calm and measured. "Their history is filled with wars, betrayals, and conflicts. Often with other species, they have been on the receiving end of manipulation and exploitation. They are afraid." He ordered. The Kavarian elder spoke up from his corner of the room. His race was known for their deep wisdom and patience. "Fear, then, is the key. But fear of what exactly? Fear of us? Or of something deeper within themselves? We must ask ourselves whether their rejection is the act of a species on the brink of something profound." Dralian remained silent for a moment, contemplating Yexor's words. The Kavarians were a species that had transcended conflict long ago. Their way of thinking was cerebral, abstract, focused on long-term outcomes rather than immediate results. Yexor's insight was invaluable, but it was also disconcerting. If the human's rejection was born of fear, then what did that fear truly signify? As the hours passed, the council struggled to find an answer. Their next move remained unclear. If the humans feared them, would their engagement be seen as a further threat? Could they begin negotiations with Earth at all, or was it too late? A sudden voice interrupted the tense silence. "We may have an answer," said Taro, the bank's philosopher, stepping forward. "I have reviewed Earth's historical records, particularly the years leading up to their failure with the Federation. There is one constant: the betrayal they felt when they were forced into alliances that undermined their autonomy." "I see," Dralian said slowly, processing the information. "So, their fear is not just of us as individuals, but of the very structure of our collective. They see us as part of a system that seeks to dominate them." "It is possible," Taru continued. "The Federation failed, but its ghosts remain. They see alliances as a means of control, not cooperation." The room was quiet for a long time as the council members pondered this new perspective. It was an unsettling revelation. If humanity saw the Galactic Council as an entity bent on their subjugation, then their refusal to negotiate made perfect sense. Earth had experienced the effects of being part of a larger system before, and it had not gone well. The scars were deep, and their pride would not allow them to be part of something they could not control. The surveillance intensifies. Zareth, ever diligent, continued her work in studying human behavior from the observation platform. She had compiled mountains of data, interviews, human broadcast transmissions, and what she had found was more complex than even she had anticipated. "They are afraid," she murmured to herself, staring at the endless data stream. "But they are also proud. They are a species that has grown through conflict, through strife. They see themselves as survivors, and survival is a fragile thing." Dralian entered the room, her presence calm yet commanding. "What have you discovered?" Zareth turned to face her, her pale face illuminated by the soft glow of the screens. "Humanity's rejection is not out of malice. It is an instinctual response to their history. They have always been on the outside, always forced to fight for what they believe is right. And in their minds, our invitation, our gesture of diplomacy, is simply another form of control." Dralian pondered her words, feeling the weight of the situation settle upon her shoulders. The Council had always prided itself on unity, but the truth was undeniable. Humanity was different. They were not like the other species they had encountered. They had a will of their own, one that was not easily swayed, and that made them dangerous. If they misunderstood the Council's intentions, "We need to find a way to reach them," Dralian said quietly, her mind racing. "But we cannot force them. They must come to us, or there will be no peace. A new approach. In the following days, the Council decided to shift their approach. Instead of pressing for an immediate response, they would give humanity the space to decide. The Ark remained above Earth, silent but vigilant. The humans had made it clear that they wanted sovereignty. The Council would respect that. And so the waiting began. Weeks passed, then months. The situation on Earth remained tense as humanity grappled with its own internal politics. The messages from the Earth Governance Coalition grew more defensive and cryptic. They spoke of exploring the stars, charting their own course, free from the interference of galactic entities. The humans had not forgotten the past. The Federation, the promises broken, the manipulation they had endured. They were determined not to make the same mistake again. But as the months passed, something changed. The tone of their communications began to shift. They were no longer rejecting everything out of hand. Instead, they seemed uncertain. Their transmission spoke of exploration, but also of curiosity, a quiet curiosity about the stars, about the greater galaxy. It wasn't much, but it was something. One day, a new transmission was received. It was from a human, an individual, not a coalition. His voice was calm, measured, as he spoke directly to the Council. "We have been watching you," the human said. "Not out of fear, but out of curiosity. You were right to wait. We needed time, but we're ready now. We want to talk." For the first time in months, the Council breathed a collective sigh of relief. But what did it mean? The humans were ready, yes, but ready for what? Was it true diplomacy they sought, or just a way to carve their own path in the galaxy? The question was not answered yet, but at least now there was a chance for dialogue. And with it a new chapter for humanity's place in the galaxy. To be continued. The Galactic Council had endured countless trials in its long history, from cultural misunderstandings to political upheavals between its member species. Yet nothing had prepared them for the uncertainty of dealing with humanity, an enigmatic species that, despite their advancements, had clearly resisted joining the galactic fold. For months now, the Ark hovered in silent orbit above Earth, a symbol of the Council's patience, but also its growing concern. The humans had rejected diplomacy, not out of hostility, but out of a deep, instinctual fear rooted in their history. It was a rejection of the very system that the Council had worked so hard to build, an organization built on the ideals of peace and cooperation. In humanity's eyes, the Council was not an ally, but a force of control. Their history had been marked by manipulation, subjugation, and the belief that they were pawns in a much larger cosmic game. They had lived through the Federation Wars, a period of galactic influence on Earth that ended in betrayal. That painful legacy had made them distrustful of any entity that offered something too good to be true. But then something remarkable happened. After months of silence, the humans' tone changed. Their transmissions grew less defensive and more inquisitive. The language became less combative, more open. They spoke not just of their rejection of the Galactic Council, but of their own struggles for autonomy, their own desires to shape their destiny without interference from outside forces. The first breakthrough came in the form of a single transmission, a message not from any government or coalition, but from an individual human. His name was Eric De Niro, a prominent scientist and former ambassador for Earth's fledgling space agency. He addressed the Galactic Council directly, his voice calm but with a certain weight that suggested he understood the gravity of the moment. "We have been watching you," Eric's voice echoed through the transmission, not with fear but with curiosity. "You were right to wait. We needed time to process what this means for us, but now We are ready to talk. The message wasn't filled with grandiose promises or declarations of peace. It was simple, humble even. But for the first time it was clear that humanity had come to some understanding of the situation. They were willing to engage, but on their own terms. Dralian, the wise and patient chairperson of the Galactic Council, felt a flicker of hope rise within her. She had watched this moment unfold with a sense of quiet optimism, knowing that it was not just humanity that needed to find peace, but the Council itself. They needed to understand what made humanity tick, not just as a species, but as individuals capable of self-determination. And now, it seemed that opportunity was finally within reach. The Council convened immediately. Dralian called for a meeting with all the members of the Council to discuss the significance of the message. Humanity has extended a hand, though hesitantly, she said as she addressed the gathered delegates. But they have reached out. It is a small step, but it is the first real sign of engagement. The room was filled with murmurs of agreement and skepticism. Zonta, the Velvac representative, was quick to voice his concerns. "This is nothing more than a calculated gesture," he said, his voice cold. "They've spent months refusing us, hiding behind their fears. I do not trust them." "I agree," said Yilor, the ancient Kavarian elder, his voice resonating with centuries of wisdom. "We have seen many species turn from distrust to cooperation. But this feels different. Humanity's rejection was not just of us, it was of everything we stand for. How can we be sure they are ready to join us without threatening everything we have built?" Dralian held up her hand, calling for silence. "We cannot approach this with suspicion alone. We must take this as an opportunity. The humans have clearly spent months contemplating their decision. They have rejected our methods, but that does not mean they reject us entirely." Zalarith, the Zelrith scholar, leaned forward, her eyes intense. "I have been studying the humans' transmissions in great detail. They are not the same species we first encountered. They are evolving, adapting, and questioning their place in the universe. Their rejection came not from malice but from fear. They are afraid of being subsumed by something larger than themselves, as they were with the Federation. But fear alone will not stop them from reaching out. They want to understand, but they are reluctant to trust. We must respect that." A heavy silence fell over the room as the Council absorbed Zareth's words. They had always been a people who sought unity through understanding, but now they faced a unique challenge. How could they gain humanity's trust without violating their deeply held beliefs? Dralian finally spoke, her voice calm but resolute. "We cannot force their hand, but we can offer them the respect they seek. We must allow them to lead the way as they have asked. We will offer an invitation, but not one of conquest or control. We will extend an olive branch, one that acknowledges their sovereignty, their autonomy. Let them decide what they want from us." The proposal. The decision was made quickly. The Galactic Council would send a new delegation to Earth, not as emissaries with an agenda, but as humble guests, acknowledging humanity's desire for control over their own future. The delegation would offer nothing more than the opportunity for further discussion, a dialogue on mutual terms. A small fleet was assembled, led by Dralian herself. It was a gesture of goodwill, signaling that the Council was ready to step back and allow humanity the space they had demanded. The fleet would descend to Earth, but it would not land in the heart of any. The Ark, still hovering above the planet, stood as a silent sentinel, its powerful energy systems no longer projecting dominance but merely observing. The humans would decide if they wanted to move forward and when. For now, it was the Council's turn to wait. Days passed without word from the humans. Tension began to creep back into the Council, and it seemed as though the moment of potential cooperation was slipping away. But then, a new message arrived. The humans had chosen a location, an unassuming place on the edge of a vast open ocean, a place known to them as the Threshold. It was a place that symbolized their willingness to step into the unknown, a neutral ground that would allow for a fresh start. The humans had agreed to meet. Dralian stood before the assembled council members, her eyes fixed on the projection of Earth below. "This is it," she said softly. "The moment we have all been waiting for." The meeting. The ark descended slowly toward Earth, its surface glimmering in the sunlight. The Galactic Council's fleet followed suit, each ship positioned carefully to avoid making any gesture that could be misinterpreted as a threat. As the ships landed on the shore near the humans' chosen site, a small group of human representatives emerged. Eric De Niro was among them, his face a mixture of resolve and uncertainty. He was the same scientist who had initiated the first human transmission to the Council, and now, as the representative of Earth's future, he had returned to offer his people's first real engagement with the galaxy at large. Eric looked up at the Council's ships with a deep breath, his eyes scanning the elegant alien designs. He knew that this was no ordinary diplomatic meeting. This was the beginning of something unprecedented. Humanity stood on the threshold of the stars, and the choices they made today would shape their destiny forever. As he approached Dralian, his gaze met hers. There was no grand speech, no elaborate formalities. Instead, there was just a quiet recognition between the two of them, the understanding that this moment was not just about politics or power, but about two civilizations coming together to acknowledge their shared humanity. "We are ready to begin," Eric said simply. Dragian nodded, a gentle smile appearing on her face. "So are we." And with those words, the true discovery began, not of planets or technologies or distant stars, but of each other. The beginning of dialogue, the beginning of trust, and the beginning of a future that had been forged through struggle, understanding, and the willingness to meet in the middle. The Council had waited, and now humanity was ready to join them, not as a subject to be controlled, but as a partner in the galaxy. It was a humbling thought, one that resonated with Dralian deeply. The true power of diplomacy lay not in coercion, but in the quiet, patient willingness to understand, to learn, and to adapt. The stars were no longer a distant goal. They were within reach. Together. To be continued.